There's a beautiful story with one of the big chassidim of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe of Lubavitch, and his name was Reb Shmuel Gurari. Reb Shmuel Gurari was known as a very big gvir, very rich chassid, but also very deep thinker of Chassidus. He had this big factory in Kremenchug, and the whole family was very wealthy. And he used to have business with a lot of people, other chassidim, not necessarily Lubavitch chassidim, a lot of people, Russian people, government people. He was a very, very all-around person. And they say that one time he was sitting with two other chassidim, not Lubavitch chassidim, and each one started discussing their Rebbe. So one chassid said, my wife once was very, very ill, and the doctor said that there's nothing they could do for her. And he went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave a bracha, and she got well. Everything was beautiful and fine. I have such a good Rebbe. The second chassid said, I also have a very great Rebbe, because there was some other issue that happened with somebody else, the whole story. And they went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe took care of it. A moifes from the Rebbe, a miracle of the Rebbe. Then came Reb Shmuel Gurari's turn to speak about his Rebbe, and he said, my Rebbe is the greatest, because he performs the biggest miracles possible. So they asked him, what's your story? So he said, very simple. One time he had a sum of money, and he had an offer to make a certain business somewhere. And he didn't know whether he should invest the money in that business or he shouldn't invest it. So he went to the Rebbe Rashab, and he asked him, Rebbe, should I invest in that money, in that business or not? And the Rebbe said, yes, you should invest. I invested the money and I lost all that money. A miracle of the Rebbe. So the other two chassidim asked him, what kind of miracle is this? You lost all your money. He says, nah, you missed the point. He says, the miracle is that I'm still a chassid. That's the miracle. And he brought out a very important point here. Not every negative is a negative. He looked at it as the Rebbe wanted him to lose this money. Now, he could lose it, chas v'sholem, through doctor bills, through somebody ill in the family or whatever it is. And here the Rebbe told him, no, let's do it simple. You go, invest the money there, it's lost, finished, and it's done. And this way you're out clean. So he came and he looked at the negative, that it's really a positive. And Yidden generally live with these paradoxes, always with two opposites. There's a beautiful word from the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe says in Yiddish, there's nothing as straight as a crooked ladder, as a slanted ladder, which straight and slanted are two opposites. And the previous Rebbe, there's nothing more straight than a slanted ladder, because the truth is, if you want to go up on a ladder, it's much easier and simpler to go on a slanted ladder. And the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, said even more. There's nothing more complete, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. Because complete and heart are two opposites. Complete means ganz, and broken is broken into pieces. Says the previous Rebbe, there's nothing more complete than a broken heart. Because the paradoxes, this is what puts us together. And that's when we're going to go into this week's Parsha, Parshas Ki Siso. We are going to have one of the most fascinating stories in the Torah. Everybody looks at it as a negative. That's what it seems like to be, a very negative story about something broken. And we are going to see how the Rebbe learns it with us in Likutei Sichos, that there's nothing more complete and there's nothing more important in the basics of Judaism than this broken issue. What is it? I'm sure you all know that in this week's Parshas Ki Siso is the famous story. Moshe Rabbeinu went up on the mountain, and after 40 days he came down with two Luchos. He came down with two tablets. And what happened? He saw that the Yidden did Avodah Zarah. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? When he saw that, he took the tablets and he broke them and shattered into pieces. Then later, the Rebbe called him over, and the Rebbe said, I want you to make another aron, another box, I'm going to give you a second set of luchos instead of those luchos asher shibarta, that you broke. And what did the Rebbe say? Not only that you broke, the Chachamim explained that that means Yasher koichacha sheshibarta. Thank you for breaking the luchos. And the question is, what do you mean, thank you for breaking the luchos? Breaking the luchos. He could have done so many other things. He could have hid them, etc. Let's try to understand it. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu break these luchos? And not only that, we are saying that he broke the luchos, and the Rebbe said, Yasher koyach, thank you for breaking them, which seems something so negative. Says the Rebbe, no, thank you for doing it. We have to understand what is going on over here. Why did the Rebbe say thank you? Not only that, this whole story of Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchos, the Rebbe discusses it from all different angles. If you remember, in the summertime, we had a beautiful shiur. It's on the archives, on both on sichosonline.org and also on yeshiva.net. You'll give a look, you will see from Chafa, from the Rebbe's father's yards at Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, which almost falls out in Parshas Eikev. And Rashi over there explains that the Torah puts in proximity the passing away of Aharon HaKohen with the concept of breaking the luchos. Explains Rashi, taken from the Gemara and the Midrashim, that the passing away of a tzaddik is compared to the breaking of the luchos, which both seem something very negative. And the Rebbe explains the positive aspect of that. But obviously we're not going to be discussing that today. Another place where we see that it looks like that it's something positive, the last Rashi in Chumash, what does it say? What does it say in the last pasuk? The great, big things that Moshe Rabbeinu did in front of all the Yidden. What are the great things? You would think that Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Torah, that's the great thing. Says Rashi, no. What is the great thing? That he took the luchos and he broke the luchos, and the Rebbe says, thank you for breaking the luchos. That's the great thing that Moshe Rabbeinu accomplished in his life. And the question is, what is going on over here? Breaking the luchos was his biggest accomplishment. What is this? And we're not going to be discussing that. What we're going to be discussing is a third aspect of the breaking of the luchos. And the basic concept that we're going to try to understand is, why did Moshe Rabbeinu break the luchos? Why didn't he just hide them? Why didn't he return them back to the Eibishter? And why did he store them away? When we have something broken, we try to fix it, or if we have something instead of it, then we throw out the other one, we put it away. We don't keep it. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe told him to keep both luchos. So obviously there must be something unbelievable, interesting, and important regarding these breaking of the luchos. So the question is, what is it that caused this beauty of breaking the luchos? So let's go straight to our case, and this is all in the Gemara in Likutei Sichos, taking from Likutei Sichos Chelik Chavav, volume 26. This is on pages 248 through pages 253, and we're going to see that the breaking of the luchos, this is the basics of Judaism, and the whole of Torah stands on the shivrei luchos, on the broken luchos. What is it? Let's go to our sources. Go to source number 1. This is in our Parshas Ki Siso, Perik Lamed Dalet Pasuk Aleph. Says the Rebbe as follows: Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. The Rebbe said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Psal lecha shnei luchos avonim korishonim. Carve out for yourself, chisel out 2 new tablets of stone like the first ones. Vechosavti ala luchos, I'm going to write on these luchos as hadvarim asher hayu ala luchos harishonim, the same words which were on the first luchos, asher shibarto, that you broke. The question is, why did the Rebbe have to stress to him the first luchos that you broke? We all know what happened to those luchos. Look at source number 2, says the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, page 87, says the Gemara as follows: the Tanya, because we learned, Shloisha Dvarim Asa Moshe Midaite. There are 3 things that Moshe Rabbeinu did on his own, without asking the Eibishter, and the Eibishter agreed to him. One is that he added an extra day before Matan Torah. We're not going to get into that. Another one on how he dealt with his wife, which we're not going to get into that. The third one, says the Gemara, V'shavar es haluchos, and he broke the luchos, and the Rebbe agreed. Says the Gemara, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's logic on why did he break the luchos? Why did he think he could do something like this? Says the Gemara, my Dorish, what did he learn? How did he learn this? Says the Gemara that he used cheshbon. It was like this: Uma Pesach shehu echad mitaryag mitzvahs. Korban Pesach is only one of the 630 mitzvahs. Amra Torah, says the Torah, v'chol ben neichar lo yochal boy. Anyone who's an apostate, anybody who's an outsider, should not eat from the Korban Pesach. In other words, someone who doesn't have the correct connection with Torah is not allowed to have the Korban Pesach. Ha Torah kulokan. Here I have the whole Torah. V'Yisrael mumrim, and the Yidden are sort of rebellious. They're not keeping the Torah properly because they were doing the Egel. Alachas kama v'kama. How much more so that they cannot have the Torah. This was what Moshe Rabbeinu's logic was on not giving them the Luchos and breaking them. Says the Gemara, how do we know that the Eibishter Take agreed to this action? Says the Gemara, Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk that we just learned in source number 1, Asher Shibarto, that you broke. The Amar Rish Lakish says that the word Asher spells the concept of the Yasher Koichaka. Yasher Koiach, thank you, Sheshibarto. God bless you for the fact that you broke these Luchos. And as Rashi explains right away, look in source number 3, Rashi here on the Gemara says Asher. The word Asher comes from the word Ishur, confirmation, Sheishrei v'shibchoi al shvirasan, that the Eibishter confirmed and the Rebbe praised his breaking. The word confirming, Ishur, comes from Asher, Ishur. It's very similar. So therefore says the Rebbe, Asher Shibarto, the Rebbe confirms his breaking of the Luchos, this action. The question is though, Rashi says 2 things. Rashi says Ishroi, here in source number 3, the Rebbe confirmed, but Rashi adds another words, Veshibchoi, and the Rebbe praised him for breaking the Luchos. Wait a minute. That the Rebbe agreed to him, okay, Moshe Rabbeinu did it, he had a cheshbon, fine. But what was the praise over here? It seems that it is not just the Rebbe agreed. The Rebbe praised Moshe Rabbeinu for breaking the Luchos. Why? What's so special about breaking the Luchos? And you can't tell me that the reason is because he wanted to save the Yidden, so therefore he had to break them. No. If he wanted to save the Yidden, all you have to do is just make a hole in the ground, hide them and finish. He doesn't have to break them. Breaking Luchos is a very negative action. So the question is, why did the Rebbe praise him? Well, there's another reason why Moshe Rabbeinu had a logic of breaking the Luchos, which explains a little more the concept of the breaking. Let's go to source number 4. Rashi here on the pasuk says a very interesting mashal on the words where the Rebbe says in source number 1, Psal lecha shnei luchos avanim, carve out, chisel out another 2 stones. Says Rashi, Psal lecha, chisel out. Ata shibarta rishonos, you broke the first ones. Yeah, I'm holding in source number 4. Ata psal lecha cherished, you chisel out new ones. Says Rashi, Moshe lemelech, I'm going to give you an example, a parable from a king. Shehalach limdina sayam, he took a trip, a faraway trip. Vehiniach arusosoi imashvachis, and he left his bride to be. In other words, he was engaged to a young lady, and he left her with the other maids. Mitoich kilkul ashvachis, since the maids weren't very moral, Yotza Oleh Hoshemra, went out a bad name also on this bride to be. Omachushvina, got up the bridesman, the one who helps out the bride, Vekara Ksubasa, and he ripped the Ksuba, the marriage contract between the king and this Kala to be. Omar, and he said, Im Yoimar Amelech Lehoirga, if the king will come back and say to kill her because of what she did, I will tell him, Adayan eina ishtecha, she's still not your wife, because there's no ksuba, there's no nothing, there's nothing to prove it, and you didn't get married yet. Badak HaMelech, the king checked, umotza, and he found out, sheloi hoyo hakilkul elo min hashfachos. He saw that the only ones who did immoral things were the maids, but not his kala. Nisratzela. So the king was very pleased. Omar lo shushvina. So then the bridesman told him, I just want you to know that the first ksuba was ripped, so please write another one. So the melech told him, Ato koraito oiso, you rip the ksuba. Ato knei lecha niyar acher, you buy another paper for the ksuba. Vani echtav lo b'ksav yodi, and I will write it with my hand. Kach, the same thing. What's the nimshal? What's the real story over here that for the marshal? Hamelech zakodesh baruch Hu. The king is the Rebishter. Hashfachos, who are the maids? Elu erev rav. These are all the people that came out together with the Yidden from Mitzrayim. V'ashushvin, who is the bridesman? Ze Moshe Rabbeinu. Arusa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the bride to be, the Arusa of the Rebishter. Elu Yisrael, these are the Yidden. Lekach nemar psal lecha. That's what the Rebishter says, that Moshe Rabbeinu, since he's the bridesman of the Yidden, therefore he should prepare the Luchos. So it turns out over here that now we can understand why the Rebishter praised Moshe Rabbeinu, because he actually saved the Yidden by breaking the Luchos. Because he broke the Luchos, so the Rebishter couldn't get angry at the Yidden for the fact that they did the Avodah Zarah. But this is still not enough. Because in order to save the Yidden, what he could have done, he could have just taken the Luchos and hide them. He didn't have to break them. It seems like the Rebishter was happy with the fact that he broke the Luchos. Not only that, it seems that the Rebishter is happy with the act of breaking, not with the outcome, that because he broke, so the Yidden got saved. As we're going to see now, look at source number 5. The Rebishter in Dvarim, in the last book of the Torah, the Rebishter repeats everything that happened in the previous Chumashim. And when the Rebishter repeats the story of the Egel, what does the Rebishter say? Look in source number 5, Parsha Eikev, Perik Yud, Pasuk Aleph and Beis. The Rebishter says as follows: Bo'ei sahi amar Hashem Elai, at that time the Rebishter told me, Psal lecha shnei luchos avonim karishonim, carve out 2 luchos like the first ones. V'chosavti v'alei elai hahara, and come up to me on the mountain. V'osisa lecha aroin eitz, and make yourself a ark, a box of wood. Ve'echtav ala luchos, and I'm going to write on the luchos as hadvarim asher hayu ala luchos harishonim, the words that were on the first luchos, asher shibarto, that you broke, v'samtam ba'oren, and put them into the oren. Says the Gemara, look in your source number 6, the Gemara in Baba Basra, Daf Yud Dalet Amid Beis. What does the Rebishter say? Shivrei luchos de munachim ba'oren minale. How do we know that in the Oren, there wasn't only the complete Luchos, in the Oren there was also the broken Luchos. Now there's a whole to-do, were they in 2 separate boxes, in 1 boxes, in 1 ark or 2 arks. We're not going to get into that. But there is no question that the Rebishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, take the broken Luchos and put them into an Oren. And the question is, how do we know this? Answers the Gemara, the Tani Rav Yosef. Said Rav Yosef, what does it say here in the pasuk? The Rebishter told him, take new luchos, and I'm going to write on them what was on the first luchos, asher shibarto, that you broke, v'samtom ba'oren, you should put them in the oren. Says the Gemara, says Rav Yosef, asher shibarto v'samtom. Why did the Rebishter say over here that you broke? We know already what happened. Because the Rebishter wants to put together that you broke and put them in the Oren, which means the luchos that you broke, you should put into the Oren. Melamed, says the Gemara, shehaluchos v'shivre luchos munachim ba'oren, that the luchos and the broken luchos are both in the Oren. Yeah? Amar Ishlakish asher shibarta. What does it mean that you broke? Amar LaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe Yasher Kaichach asher shibarta. The Rebishter is thanking him for giving him praise for breaking the luchos. So what do we see over here? That even the broken luchos belong where? In the Oren. What does the Ramban explain? Why is it that the Rebishter wanted to put the broken luchos in the Oren? Look at source number 7, says the Ramban. Pirush Smuchin Kadarish, that we learn the fact that the 2 words are next to each other. Miksum, Mishum, Diksiv, Veshibarto, Vesamtom, because it says that the Shibarto, that you broke, and you should place them in their box. Alma, Shivre Luches, Chavivin Lifnei Amokim, that the broken Luches are beloved by the Eibishter. If the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Luchos was something hard for the Eibishter to accept, the Eibishter would have never said to put them into the Oren. Why? Because a prosecutor cannot become a defendant. The broken Luchos, if there's something bad, then the Eibishter wouldn't say to put them in the box, and they used to take them to war and all kinds of other things. Therefore, says the Ramban, "Mishum smuchin dorish hay asher lashon ashrei," and therefore, because it says asher shibarto, asher. What is asher? As we said before, from the word isher, from the word of acceptance of giving a statement that this is okay. So therefore I understand that the Rebbe was happy that this was something that was beloved. So what do we see here? That the act of breaking, this is something that was beloved, not the fact that he saved the Yidden like the one that I answered before. So the question comes back again, what was so special about the breaking of the Luchos? And the main question is, what is this? The Rebbe puts it in a box as a souvenir. When someone has a tragedy and then the whole house falls from a hurricane, is he going to put the debris on the side in a box as a remembrance? No. You throw it away, and then especially when you have some new ones. So it seems over here that the actual breaking is something special. What is it? What's so special about this breaking? We'll try one more answer, and then we'll go to how the Rebbe explains it in Likutei Sichos. The other Mefarshim to say, yes, the breaking of the Luchos was something good for the Luchos themselves. What was so special? Let's look at source number 8. Medrash Rabbin Shmois, Parsha Memvav says as follows. Moshe hischileit stair al shibra Luchos. After Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Luchos, he was a little bit uncomfortable with it. He was mitztair. The Amar le HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbe told him, Al titztair beluchos harishonos. Don't feel bad for the fact that you broke the first Luchos. Why? The first 10 Luchos only contained the 10 commandments, the Aseres HaDibros. The second Luchos, I'm going to give you the second ones that I'm going to give you. What's going to be in there? Halachis, Medrash, Agodas. And he brings a pasuk. This is what it says in a pasuk in Iyov. That what the Rebbe is going to give in this second Luchos, he gave kiflayim letushio. He gave more than double of what the original one was. Which means that the Rebbe is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, don't feel so bad. The first Luchos was of something very limited. The second Luchos, that is where you have all the goodies. And therefore, you broke them, fine, don't worry. The second ones are even better. So therefore we see that there's something special about breaking the Luchos, because now Moshe Rabbeinu got something better. How do we see that breaking helps to get something better? Let's look in source number 9. Says the Gemara in Menachos, Daf Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph. Amar Rish Lakish, said Rish Lakish, Pe'amim, sometimes works out, Shebitula shel Torah zehu yesoida. Sometimes bitul Torah, not learning Torah, this is how you uphold Torah. Diksiv. How do we know that sometimes not doing Torah is really a good thing? Says the Gemara Diksiv, because it says in the Torah, Asher shibarta, that you broke the Luchos, that it seems like you did something negative. Says the Rebbe, no, Yasher koyach asher shibarta. You get a Yasher koyach for breaking it. What does that mean? Explains Rashi. Look at source number 10. Says Rashi here in the Gemara, Shebitula shel Torah. What does it mean, bitul Torah sometimes is a positive? Kagoyin, says Rashi, for example, Shemevatul Torah lehoitzo asames. What happens if chas v'shalom there's a funeral, there's a levaya, and somebody's sitting and learning, and because he heard that there's a levaya, he stops learning and he goes to the funeral to cover dames, or let's say ulachnos askalo, or for example he stops learning for what? For going to help out a kala to get married. Says Rashi, zehu yesoida. This is called upholding Torah. Just to give an example, let's say when in the Olympics or in any race, when someone has to make a very big jump, somebody has to make a big jump. How does he do it? He goes back a few steps and then he runs. Or for those of you who are Italians and love soccer, right? So sometimes there's something called a rigore. It's a penalty from inside the area. So how does it work? They place the ball in a certain place, and somebody from the opposite team has to throw it into the goalie. How does it work? He goes back a whole bunch of steps, and then he runs to be able to give a stronger shot. So someone who doesn't understand what is going on here, and he sees the player going back, or the athlete taking steps back, he says, hey, why is he going back? He's supposed to be going frontward. And the answer is, because sometimes going back is really to be able to get a sprint, a much stronger sprung, to be able to go further. The same thing over here. Sometimes it seems like that we're doing a bittul of Torah, that we're doing a not learning Torah, but really we are upholding Torah by doing properly the Levi or Achnas Skala. Says Rashi, Kaloimar, which means, Mekabel Schar, by doing this other mitzvah, he receives a reward, Ke'ilu Yoshevu Miyasto ve'oisek ba. It's as if he's actually learning Torah when he's doing these other things. Shenemar, because it says in the Torah, Asher Shibarta, that the Rabbi says that you broke the Luchos. And says Rashi, Veloy Amar le Beloshin Kas. The Rabbi didn't say the Luchos that you broke because you broke the Luchos, and therefore I have no choice, I have to give other Luchos. No. The Rabbi said, I am so happy that you broke the other luchos, and therefore I'm going to give you two even nicer ones. Shma mino, we see from here, the skima imoy das ashchina. The Rabbi was maskim to Moshe Rabbeinu, agreed with Moshe Rabbeinu. Keshebitel Torah, when he was mevatel Torah, he nullified Torah. How? By vishibron, by breaking Torah. Kivish is kaven letayva, because he had a intention of good. What was the intention? That eventually, whatever the reason was over there, but ultimately it turned out that he got a better reward later. So we understand from this that there's something good about the breaking, and that's what the Rebbe praised him, because through breaking the luchos, we got even better luchos, the second set, which has in it halacha, nagoda, medrash, etc. And not only that, the Baal Shem Tov says even further on this Gemara. Look at source number 11. The Baal Shem Tov says in Keser Shem Tov Sim Lamed Daled, says the Baal Shem Tov, Al Yedei Achila Ushtiya Ve'esek Maso Maton. When a person eats, when a person drinks, when a person does business in order to have parnasa, the person on that time, he doesn't learn Torah, and that looks like something negative. Says the Baal Shem Tov, no. Because when a person does this, the neshama sort of takes like a little rest. By doing parnasa, by eating, by drinking, obviously all the shem shamayim for the proper way, a person later learns much better, which means that the not learning at that time helped for a better learning afterwards. So we see that the negative could turn into a positive if you do it correctly. The same thing, the breaking of the luchos, this is what caused that he got later even bigger luchos that have in it also halachas, agodas, etc. So, according to these mefarshim, there was something good about the breaking of the luchos, because later we got better luchos. But this is also very, we need to understand it. Why did the Rebbe do it this way? The first he has to give one luchos without halachas and agodas. Then Moshe Rabbeinu will break it and then give the second one. The Rebbe could have given lechatchila first luchos with everything in it, no breaking, no nothing, and finished. It seems like that no. The Rebbe wanted to give one set of luchos. Then that set of luchos had to be broken. Once it's broken, the Rebbe is going to give second luchos. Why? It's his whole system. Something doesn't make sense. It looks like that this breaking is an integral part of understanding what the Rebbe wants with the luchos. So we have to understand what it is. So, to make a long story short, we'll understand it with one basic point. And the point is, the Rebbe is coming now to give the Torah to the Yidden. Let's analyze this for a minute. The Rebbe, this infinite God, Ein Sof, wants to give the Torah. What is the Torah? Chochmasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the knowledge of the Eibishter. Whom is he going to give this unlimited, unbelievable knowledge that a human will never be able to understand, never even be able to grasp, because a human can't grasp the Eibishter? Who does the Eibishter want to give it? To humans here on earth. That makes absolutely no sense. How is it possible that a human should be able to understand the Eibishter? The Eibishter's Chachma. Let's take, for example, the sun. Imagine we take the sun is not unlimited. The sun is just a very big fiery ball. We're going to take the sun and bring it down here on planet Earth. The whole Earth is going to burn in a second. There's not going to be anything left. Why? Because planet Earth is not a keli, is not a vessel to be able to accept such a big fire like the sun. So, is planet Earth a keli to accept the Eibishter? It's impossible. This concept of the Eibishter giving Torah to Yidden is something that makes absolutely no sense. It's impossible. Imagine, take a guy like Einstein. He's going to explain the theory of relativity to a 5-year-old child. 5-year-old child, and Einstein is going to try to explain to him, I have one thing here and another thing here, and there's a relativity between the two. The kid is going to say, this guy's crazy. Because there's just no comparison, there's no connection between these two. So the question is, how is it possible that the Eibishter should give to people the Torah and they should be able to grasp it? It's mind-boggling. Answers the Eibishter, yes. This is what the Eibishter wanted. The Eibishter wanted to take the Chochmah of the Eibishter, bring it down in such a way that even a human can understand it. It's impossible for a human to understand it. Says the Eibishter, yes, there is a way how that is possible. There is a certain preparation that human has to do. And that is bittul. What does bittul mean? Now in English there is no good word for bittul. Generally it means self-nullification, or when a person is nothingness, when he feels of himself as nothing, that's usually bittul. But to give a very simple example, when a student is listening to a teacher, at that time when he's listening, when he's absorbing, he can't talk. He can't do other things. If he does other things in the middle of listening, he's not listening 100%. He's not totally devoted to the teacher. We cannot accept Torah that way. There's only one way of accepting Torah. If we are totally bittul for the Eibishter, if we're totally nullified, then we will be able to be a vessel for the Eibishter, to accept the Torah. And this is one of the major concepts discussed in Chassidus, as we're going to be seeing in another few minutes in the sources, that on the one hand, we're asking a person that he should use his intellect to understand the Eibishter. That is what the person is a mitzias, he's a something, his intellect. On the other hand, we're saying he has to be the total bittul, he has to be totally notified. These are two very, very opposite traits. This is a paradox, an oxymoron. But we're going to see now how it works. So the bottom line, the Eibishter says, my dear Yidden, there's one way how you will be able to accept my Torah, if you're going to be with total bittul. And that is why in the davening, 3 times a day, we ask the Eibishter, please, give us that power to be able to in the proper bittul. Look at source number 12. What do we say at the end of the Shemona Esrei, at the end of the Amidah? In the Likutei Sichos, V'nafshi ke'ofor la'koil tihiyeh. I want to be like dust in front of everybody, and then psach libi b'seirasecha. Then my heart will be able to be open to accept the Torah. When I am somebody who gives nullified totally to the Eibishter, then I'll be able to absorb as much Torah as I want, as much as Torah as possible. The Gemara says that even stronger. Look at source number 13. In Eirov in Daf Nun Dal Damed Aleph says the Gemara as follows. Amar Rav Masna. Rav Masna said as follows. My diksiv, what is this that it says in the pasuk? Umi midbar matana. That when the Jews were in the desert, from the desert they received the present, the Torah. Says the Gemara, and what is the connection of the desert to Torah? Says the Gemara, Im meisim adam atzmi kemidbar. If a person makes himself like a midbar, like a desert, which means ze shehakoil doshim boy, just like a desert. What is a desert? Everybody just steps on it. People don't care where they go. They just step and step as if it's nothing. Talmudai miskayim biyodai. Then what he learns is going to be remaining very strong by him. Bim lav, but if it is not bebitul, just like a midbar, There's only one way how you can deal with Torah. If a person is bebittul, he gives himself up totally nullified to receive the Torah, then the Torah will be able to go into him properly. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And as Rashi says, look, continue in verse number 13. Im kamidbarhu, if it's like a midbar, Torah nesuna loy bematana v'lo yishachach. The Torah will be with him like a matana, like a present. In other words, the Torah, the way it comes down from the Eibishter, it's something which is Ein Sof. It's something which is unlimited. The second Luchos represent the Torah which is unlimited because it has in it halacha and agoda and everything else with it. And it's something which is Ein Sof. It represents the Eibishter. There's only one way how the Yidden can receive this Torah which is unlimited from the Eibishter. How? Bebittul. And this is what happened over here with the story. Now we will understand what happened over here with the breaking of the Luchos. We're going to see something fascinating. Look at source number 14. The Yidden were ready to receive the Torah. What happened at that time? What do we say in davening every Yom Tov? Right? The source number 14 in the Nusach HaTfilah. Ato v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. Eibishter, when we went out of Mitzrayim, you chose us from all the nations. Ahavta isanu. You loved us, and you wanted us, and you raised us from all the nations, and you made us holy with your mitzvahs, and you brought us back, and you gave us the Torah, etc., etc. So the Yidden at that time were sort of in a level of we were above all the nations. The Rebbe just took us out of Mitzrayim. They were the chosen people who are going to receive the Torah. This was a little bit of a problem, that they were missing that bittul, that nullification of what we say, v'nafshi ke'ofar lakoil tihya. We have to be nullified in front of everybody, as if we are nothing. As later the Torah says, atem ha'me'at mikol ha'amim. We are the least of all the nations. Moshe Rabbeinu came. What did he see? He's bringing the Torah to the Yidden, but the Yidden, unfortunately, are not yet ready to accept the Torah because they're not 100% bebittul. They're in the verei mamtanu mimkal al sheinos. They're in the state of verei mamtanu. Although they were sort of bebittul to the Eibishter as a preparation to Matan Torah, but that was a bittul of awe, not a bittul of they themselves. But we are totally bottled to receive the Torah, and that is why they were making the egel, because they thought that this was the proper thing, etc., etc. So Moshe Rabbeinu is coming with the Luchos, and he sees that the Yidden are not ready. They need this bittul. What did he do? Broke the Luchos. What does it mean to broke the Luchos? Let's look at source number 15. What was Moshe Rabbeinu trying to do with breaking the Luchos? Let's look at source number 15, the last pasuk in the Torah. What does it say? Ulachol hayada chazaka, the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, the great hand. Ulachol hameira agadol, and all the great fear. Asher asa Moshe le'einei kol Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu did le'einei kol Yisrael, in front of all the Yidden. This is how the Torah ends. What is this thing that he did in front of all the Yidden? Says Rashi, shenos oy liboy, the greatest thing that Moshe Rabbeinu could have ever done, that his heart pushed him, lishboy Luchos, to break the Luchos, le'eineihem, in front of the Yidden, le'einei kol Yisrael. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, va'ashabrem le'einechem. He broke them in front of the Yidden. Why did he break them in front of the Yidden? He could have just hid the Luchos. No! He wanted to break them in front of the Yidden, that they should realize that what they need is the breaking, the bittul. Once they will have the correct bittul, they will be able to receive the full and complete, unlimited Torah. And that is why the Rebbe, the Rashi continues, and the Rebbe says, yes, Moshe Rabbeinu, you are correct. You are the one who is going to make it that the Yidden should be able to receive the Torah properly. Because right now the Yidden weren't yet ready. They needed that extra push to be 100% bebittul. Shenemar asher shibarta, yasher koichach asher shibarta. Thank you for breaking the Luchos. Because now, once you broke the Luchos, le'einehem, in front of the Yidden, what did you accomplish? That now the Yidden are 100% bebittel, they're broken, they're doing the proper tshuva to be totally subjugated to the Eibishter. How do we see that this is actually what happened with the Egel? Look at source number 16. Says the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Ve'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. We're going to see something fascinating, a total different look at this whole story of the breaking of the Luchos and the story of the Egel. The Gemara says it very clearly. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, Ve'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Lo yasu Yisrael es ha'egel. The only thing that happened when the Yidden, why did the Yidden do the Egel? The golden calf. Are they nuts? How could they do Avodah Zarah all of a sudden? Says the Gemara, no. Do you know why they did this Egel? To give an opening, a perfect way for a Baal Tshuva, someone who wants to come back to the Eibishter. Says Rashi, what does that mean? The Yidden were strong, and they were stronger than their Yetzer Hara. And the Yetzer Hara couldn't have made them make the Egel. So why did they make the Egel? Says Rashi, it's amazing. This was a gzeira of the Eibishter. The Eibishter made them do it. That the Yetzer Hara can do it, to make an opening for someone who wants to do tshuva. What is that opening? If the one who chas v'shalom made a sin, he'll say, I don't want to do tshuva because they won't accept me anyways. What do we tell them? Go and learn from the story of the Egel. That the Yidden went, unfortunately, seems like against the Eibishter, and they were accepted with tshuva. So we see what was the whole purpose of the Egel? That Yidden should do tshuva. What is the concept of tshuva? When a person subjugates himself totally to the Eibishter, says, no, what I did was wrong. I am totally not here. I am giving myself totally to the Eibishter. And this is what we said in number 6. That what's the whole concept of the Luchos? That when we have a Oren, Luchos v'shivre Luchos munachim ba'oren. There's the whole Luchos, which is the whole Torah. But first comes what? Shivre Luchos, the broken Luchos. What is the idea of the broken Luchos? The bittul. Before we can have Torah, we have to have bittul for the Eibishter. You can't start learning Torah without that. The way it works is, there's a system. First, you have to subjugate yourself totally to the Eibishter, bittul. Then you could start learning Torah. When somebody looks at a book of stories, at a book of medicine, at a book of physics, how do you look at it? He opens, but I will decide if what says over there is correct, if I want to accept, I don't want to accept it. In other words, it's me who is coming to read the book, and the guy who wrote the book, either he knew what he was talking about, or he didn't know what he's talking about. In Torah, it's not like that. In Torah, before you start learning Torah, you have to make a bracha. What's the bracha? Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'nosan lanu es Torah soy. He gave us His Torah, the Eibishter's Torah. Oh, I'm going to learn the Eibishter's Torah. So who am I? I'm a nothing. I'm going to learn the Eibishter's Torah. And we say, Baruch Atah Hashem nosein haTorah, that today the Eibishter is giving the Torah. So there's only one way how I could learn Torah. If I am nothing, and I'm going to learn what the Eibishter has to tell me. And that's why there's another whole sikha from the Rebbe explaining why does the Torah start with a beis, with the second letter. The Torah should have started with an aleph. Aleph is the first letter. The Seres HaDibros start with an aleph. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. So why did the Torah start with a beis? It's a long explanation, but in a nutshell, Bereishis, learning Torah, that's the second step. That's beis. That's the second thing. Before learning the Torah comes aleph. There's something that comes before, and that is the bittul to the Eibishter, the bracha to the Eibishter, noisen haTorah, that I'm going to totally subjugate myself to the Eibishter, nullified, bittul. And that's why, how did it work? When Moshe Rabbeinu came to give the Torah, he didn't give them the Torah. First, he broke the Luchos. He made a concept of bittul, le'einehem, as it says in the last pasuk in the Torah. And therefore they are chavivin. That's why the Luchos, the broken Luchos, are beloved by the Eibishter, because only after we had this bittul of the breaking of the bittul of the Yidden, that is when the Eibishter was able to give them the unlimited Torah, the second Luchos. But if that's the case, that there's going to be the $1 million question here. Everybody asks the same question. And this is one of the toughest concepts in Chassidus Chabad. And that is, wait a minute. What are we supposed to expect from a Jew? On the one hand, we're asking him to be with total bittul. Give yourself totally to the Eibishter. On the other hand, what are we saying? That a person has to use his intellect to understand Torah. As the Rambam says, what's the basics of everything? That a person should leida shesha motzei. He should know what the Eibishter is. Bittul and seichel, the intellect and nullification, are two opposites, total opposites. So how does that work? And many Maimorim, discourses in Chassidus that discuss this paradox. How does that work? So here we come to the punchline, and that is, we discussed it, if you remember, in a shir, with the miracle of Hanukkah, in a one-liner. What's a miracle? A miracle is something which is impossible for a person to do. But there's two types of miracles. There's a regular miracle, and then there's a nimna hanimnois miracle. What does that mean? The regular miracle is when you take nature and you break nature. Splitting of the sea. Kriyas Yamsuf. Can a person split a sea? No, a person cannot split a sea. Can technology do that? Meanwhile, for sure not. But can a person relate to it? Can a person understand it? Can a person grasp a concept of a sea splitting? Yes, a person can grasp it. He can't understand how he could do it, but he can definitely picture something like that. He could picture a camel flying. He could picture all these type of things, but he doesn't know how to do it. That is a regular miracle. A miracle that the intellect can understand it. Or the burning bush, it's burning, but it's not consuming. Yeah, you could imagine something like that. But then there's another miracle. That miracle is called nimna hanimnois, the impossible of the impossible. For example, if the Eibishter could make that somebody could be sitting and standing at the same time. Can the Eibishter do it? Of course the Eibishter could do it. Can a person grasp what does it mean sitting and standing at the same time? No, a person cannot grasp that. That's called nimna hanimnois. Where do we find such a miracle of this oxymoron, this not normal, this impossible of the impossible, like sitting and standing at the same time? Look at number 17. In the Sefer HaChakira of the Tzemach Tzedek, what does he say? Ayin b'tshuvas harashba siman tov yudches. Look in the Tshuvas HaRashba in number Tov Yud Ches. Be'inyan das ha-filosofim. That the philosophers say sheyesh lenimna teva kayim. That the impossible can be. In other words, the Eibishter can do the impossible. However, shehu reichev u'bilti reichev yachad b'nekuda achas. But the Eibishter should be standing and sitting at the same time. No, that the Eibishter cannot do, because that's the impossible of the impossible. That's called nimna hanimnois. The nimna he could do, the impossible he could do, but not the impossible of the impossible. Or kaisev v'loy kaisev, or right and not right at the same time. Or there's the avar heve asid, there's the past, the present, and the future. Can a person grasp, or can the Eibishter make something that should be future and present and past at the same time? No, the Eibishter cannot do it. That's what the philosophers say. The Eibishter could only do things which are impossible, but not the impossible of the impossible. Nimna hanimnois. Says the Rashba. The Rashba doesn't agree with that. Shlegaba kadosh baruch hu ein shum nimna. To Eibishter, there's nothing which is impossible, and not even the impossible of the impossible. Why? Because because a person doesn't have to try to grasp the Eibishter. So can the Eibishter do the impossible of the impossible? 100%. Now, where in history do we find a miracle that was the impossible of the impossible? Nimna hanimnois. One place. Where's that? In the Beis HaMikdash. By where? Look in source number 18, and here's where everything is going to fall into place beautifully. Look at the Gemara. Yom Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. The Gemara says as follows: Asara nisim nasu b'mikdash. There were 10 miracles that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, and those are all the famous ones that are brought in Pirkei Avos and in other places. Says the Gemara, Vesuleka, only these 10? There must be more. V'ha'amar Rabbi Levi says, Davar zeh maseiris biyodeinu me'aveseinu. This we received in maseiris, we received in tradition from our parents, that mokim orein einu min amida, that the place of the orein doesn't take up any space. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Answers the Gemara, Nisi dibroi kachashiv. The nisim that happened on the outside that everybody was able to see, that is what we enumerate in the Gemara. Nisi de gavoy, however, those hidden miracles, the ones that were in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the holiest of holy, that nobody was able to see, loy kachashiv. The Gemara doesn't discuss it. As you can see here, the image on the curriculum after number 18, the space in the room of the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 amos. Was a measurement of 20. The Aron was 2.5, which means that if I have a space of 20 and the Aron takes up 2.5, which is in the middle, so if I measure from the end of the Aron to the wall and from the end of the Aron on the other side to the other wall, how much space do I have in between? If the whole thing is 20 and I take off 2.5, so on each side you have 8 3/4 amos, because 8 3/4 plus 8 3/4 is 17.5, and 2.5 of the Aron, so it's going to, the number is going to match. Says the Gemara, no. The way it worked was, when you counted from one corner to the other corner was 20 amos. When you counted from one end of the Aron to the corner, and the other end of the Aron to the corner, to the other side of the wall, each side you had 10 amos, which means the Aron didn't take up any space. Which means it was there and it wasn't there. It took up space, it didn't take up space, which is called nimna hanimnois, means the impossible of the impossible. It makes absolutely no sense. Why? This is what it is. What was the Aron? The Aron was the Ark of the Torah. What was in the Aron? What did we say before in source number 10? We said that, in number 6 and 7, that Luchos and Shivrei Luchos Munachos ba'Aron. What was the Aron? The Aron is this infinite Torah. The Torah which is it's impossible for a human to grasp. Says the Rebbe, yes. Do you know how it could be grasped? If Shivrei Luchos and Luchos are together. If first you have the bittul, and then you have the Torah, yes, then you'll be able to accept it, be able to understand Torah. How is that possible? It's nimna hanimnois. We're talking about the impossible of the impossible. That a human should be able to understand godliness. It's impossible. It's two opposites. A human is material, the Rebbe is spiritual. How could the two have anything to do with each other? Says the Rebbe, yes. In this place I have put a special power which is called nimna hanimnois, the impossible of the impossible. The Rebbe gave a Jew the power of doing the impossible of the impossible. How? When he learns Torah, he can learn the Torah of the Eibishter, which is amazing. It's almost impossible to grasp how that is possible. This is what the Eibishter did. How? But that's only if first there's the bittul. If there's bittul, then you can accept Torah. If there is no bittul, then the Torah that a person learns is not Torah. And that is why we see that unfortunately there were sometimes in history when people pulled out from the Torah certain things incorrectly. I'm not going to go now into the details, obviously, of what this was. Why? How is it possible that people take out from Torah things not properly? Because they didn't go to Torah with the proper bittul. And therefore, after a while, whatever these people said was gone. What stayed with us is Maseiris from the beginning. Why? Because the people who learned Torah properly, how did they do it? With total bittul. And then they accepted everything the Rebbe says. Then they put in their intellect and try to understand it. But first, they knew that they're learning the Eibishter's Torah. Once you learn the Eibishter's Torah, you don't play around with it as if this was some humanly thing that was done. Not that I could say whatever I want about it. And therefore, once there is the proper bittul, that is when we can grasp the Torah. For Chassidim, this is not very hard to understand. Because Chassidim, Baruch Hashem, they had something which was called, I'm just going to give one or two examples how to materialize this concept of this oxymoron of bittul and understanding and using your intellect and how to do with Torah. We find that every person that went into the Rebbe in Yechidus, for a private audience, his whole life changed. You see today, today what we hear from people is almost nothing compared to what there was, because unfortunately most of the people who went into Yechidus, the Yechidus stopped already over 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. And this was all from 40 and 50 years ago that we are hearing what happened. Why is that? Why is it that people change their whole life after a short conversation with the Rebbe? And the reason is because when people went to the Rebbe, they weren't just like going to a doctor, like going to a lawyer, like going to a special person. Because no matter who we interact with, we always look at the other person. Okay, so he's a little bit bigger than me. He knows his profession a little better than me, but he's not a greater person. He's not much smarter than me, etc. When a person walked into the Rebbe, it was sort of, he felt like he's $1 compared to $1 billion. What's $1 compared to $1 billion? Almost nothing. Or nothing. 1 compared to $1 billion, it's almost nothing. And therefore, a person knew that he's going into the Rebbe. If it comes to learning Torah, the Rebbe knows 1 billion times more than, millions of times more than what he knows. And if you talk about Yiras Shamayim, or we talk about knowledge, the Rebbe is on a such bigger, higher level than him. So that's what the person went in with an awe, that he is a nothing and he's going into the Rebbe. This is how it is in Chassidus Chabad. When he went into the Rebbe, all of a sudden, this $1 billion comes and says, you think you're 1, 2, 3, so you are something. Don't get scared by the fact that there's $1 billion here. And this is why, after there's this bittul of going in, then you could grasp and bring in and then use that out to the best of your ability. And this is what the Eibishter wants with Torah. The Eibishter wants a Yid to be able to accept Torah. There's only one way. If he's mevatel himself to the Eibishter, in other words, he is a nothing. And he is there only to do what the Eibishter wants him to do. To make a dir leisbarach, that we should make this place into a dwelling place for Hashem. Then we are going to be doing the Torah correctly. And this is what Torah Chassidus explains the whole time. That the first thing that a person needs is bittul. And when we have a Rebbe to look up to, it's so much easier to come to the concept of bittul, because we have someone to look up to that he's so much higher than what we are, so therefore we are a nothing. But I would like to give a very practical example, which I heard years ago from my dear friend, Professor Branover, soll sein gesund und stark, der Eibishter sende mir refuah shleima. He was amazing. He was a big physicist in Russia. And this was in the 60s when Russia was still, the Iron Curtain was as strong as anything. But the Lubavitch Chassidim were working unbelievably in those days. There was only Lubavitch at that time in Russia. And there was a Chassid, his name was Reb Notke Barkan. And Reb Notke somehow managed to take this physicist, Professor Branover, who was a cupmensch, he was an unbelievable intellect. He worked for the government, and he was in danger every single day for the fact that he was starting to become frum. And when he started learning with Notke, so they started from Chumash Bereshis. And he started learning Bereshis, Bara, Leikim, Es Hashemayim V'Sa'aretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. As soon as Professor Branover heard these words, he has started having questions one after another. And after 3-4 days, Notke noticed that they're learning 1 pasuk a day, 2 psukim a day, not more. So Notke, because Professor Branover had so many questions, and Notke was sitting there to explain to him, etc. Finally, Notke said, hold it, we're not doing this correct. What we're going to do is like this. I'm going to be talking now for 2 months straight. And I'm going to tell you the whole story. And I'm going to say 1 pasuk and the next pasuk and explain it, etc. Anytime you have a question, say, I have a question. Don't tell me what the question is. Write it down on a piece of paper, in a notebook. I don't want to hear the question. After you wrote it down, I'm going to continue talking. And this is how they went for 2 months. Notke did not answer Professor Branover not 1 question. Professor Branover wrote down every time he had a question. And he wrote down pages and pages of questions. After 2 months of learning, and Professor Branover absorbed so much knowledge from Notke, then Notke said, okay, now let's open up the notebook. And he went over the notebook, and what did he see? That 95% of the questions Professor Branover was able to answer. Why? Because he saw that with Torah, the way it works is, first absorb. Put away all your ideas. Don't come with preconceived notions. I am a nothing. This is what the Rabbi tells us clearly. This is what we pray 3 times a day. That I should be a nothing. Ke'offer, like dust. That is going to cause that my heart is going to be fully open with Torah. And this is the broken Luchos. The Rabbi said the system is, first there's a broken Luchos. First there's the concept of bittul, the concept of nullification, and then we receive the Luchos, which are Ein Sof, which are unlimited. Because the only way how a human, a material human, can accept the Eibishter is if he puts himself totally to the side and says, Eibishter, I am all yours, you give me, I will accept everything that you give me. And it has to be a bittul that everyone sees that this person is so humble that he's just there to absorb from the Eibishter. Then later, with his knowledge, he takes that and he nurtures, and then he could teach others. And therefore, we see over here what we started in the beginning. So why did the Rebbe love so much the concept of the breaking the Luchos? Because the breaking of the Luchos prepared the Yidden to receive the Torah properly. That is why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't hide the Luchos. On the contrary, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Luchos and broke them, le'eineihem, in front of the Yidden, to cause in them this concept of bittul. And therefore, not everyone is able to put interpretation to the Torah. Only those who have a total bittul to the Eibishter, and first they know all the rules and regulations, who can paskin, and how, and from where, then we could have someone who is going to do Torah, and that do paskin edin. And this is also what Chassidus explains so much all over the place, to explain the paradox of, is a person supposed to be totally nullified for the Eibishter and put away his intellect? Or is a person supposed to use Chachma, Bina, Das, Chabad to understand the Eibishter? The answer is, it's a process. First bittul, then Chabad. First you're a Chassid, which means you're bottled totally to the Eibishter, to the Rebbe, to what you have to receive. And after that, you could use your Chabad, your Chachma, Bina, Das. And this is how we experience every single day the broken Luchos. When we make the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem noisen ha-Torah. Eibishter, I thank you for giving me your Torah. How can I have your Torah? If I'm v'nafshi kafar l'kol tihya, then I sit down to learn Torah. I become one with the Eibishter, just like the Luchos. The letters in the Luchos were engraved, because the Luchos, the stone, and the Torah became one. So to a Yid, he becomes just like a Luchos, where him and the Eibishter is one, as the Alter Rebbe explained in Tanya Perek Hey, in the 5th chapter, that the unity between a person and the Torah is one. How do we do that? By being proper broken Luchos, bittul to the Eibishter properly, and then we will be zeicha to receive the Torah properly, and ultimately we're going to receive the Torah ha'ein sof, is the true unlimited Torah, and that is going to be when Mashiach comes. And what's going to happen then? We're going to get the Torah chadasha miti teitzei, the new Torah, which means the unlimited Torah, that a person will then be able to grasp all the secrets of Torah, as the Rambam explains at the end of his book, which is going to happen in Mirz Hashem. Today, Bekarev Mamash.